Entry 4. They call it perfection, like it is a compliment. Critics and armchair philosophers like tidy words. Perfection in my work is not aesthetic, it is practical. It is the state in which a crime produces no usable pattern, no reproducible vector for pursuit. A perfect crime is one that is indistinguishable from the city's ordinary miseries. There is a perverse humility there. You are not creating legend, you are erasing authorship. It is a modest art. I once believed that anonymity was a kind of sovereignty. There is a thrill in sovereignty, but it demands isolation. You live on the other side of recognition and come to know its contours only through absence. Fewer phone calls, fewer invitations, the odd way people gloss over your existence. For decades, that absence read like success. I mistook it for freedom. Freedom, I have learned, is the luxury of not being observed. But not being observed is not the same as not wanting to be observed. They are different weights of the same hunger. There is also a moral arithmetic I teach myself. People confuse motive with meaning. Motive is a story. They want to explain a deed by reciting grievances or grievances as metaphors. I do not need a story. My acts require no moral embellishment. They are maintenance. The world accrues entropy. Sometimes you remove what disturbs its machinery. Call it purge if you are moved to romanticize. Call it method if you prefer honest language. If you search for psychology, you will catalog childhoods and traumas and formative cruelty. Those are real things and useful to reporters. But my reason is smaller and more corrosive, a need to test how much authority I possess over inevitable processes. I measure limits, not souls. That is a cruelty without ornamentation. I have often thought of perfection as the clean edge between sound and silence, an act so refined that the world does not echo afterward. That is the ultimate form of disappearance, not hiding, but erasing the very concept of having been. To do this well, one must study imperfection constantly. I spend more time cataloging failure than triumph. My failures are microscopic. A fiber left at a seam, a footprint softened but not erased, an angle of approach that introduces shadow where none should fall. No one else would notice them, but I do. Perfection does not mean no one can see you. It means you cannot see yourself in the residue. The city teaches this better than any teacher. It hides its own errors through perpetual movement. By morning, the trash collected from crime scenes mixes with bakery refuse, construction debris, and hospital linens. Every act of violence becomes civic compost. That is perfection on a municipal scale, the illusion that everything continues because no one stops long enough to observe its remains. I have imitated that rhythm. Each morning, I dissolve myself into the city's bloodstream. My routines are scaffolds disguised as habits. Same coffee stand, same seat on the tram, same casual nod to the vendor whose name I have never asked. To vanish perfectly, one must first be visible in predictable intervals. The city trusts the familiar. It fears the unannounced. There are days when I perform the ritual of imperfection deliberately. A misplaced receipt in a pocket, a fingerprint on a glass that will never be analyzed. These are my controlled leaks, minor impurities to remind me that even systems crave friction. Too much cleanliness becomes brittle. I cannot risk the sterility of a god. My victims, if they can still be called that, are not experiments in cruelty but instruments in the study of probability. The body is only the medium. I am after something quieter, the measure of precision itself. How minimal can an act become before it ceases to exist as a crime? How invisible can a presence be before it loses authorship entirely? I have found that there is a threshold, a vanishing point where perfection and nothingness overlap. The danger is that once you cross it, you no longer know if you acted at all. At times I walk past scenes of my own making long after the city has reclaimed them. A repaired fence, a repainted wall, a newsstand still selling headlines from that week's other disasters. No one remembers the absence I curated there. That amnesia is the reward, but it also stings faintly, like a scar that has forgotten why it was made. To erase oneself too thoroughly is to risk becoming irrelevant, even to the silence that raised you. There is a taxonomy of imperfection I keep privately. The loud error, a blood stain that refuses full obedience, a camera turned the wrong way. The bureaucratic error, a missing report, a file misstated by an inattentive clerk, the kind of error that conceals miracles beneath paperwork. And the human error, emotion's small sabotage, Curiosity, boredom, the mind's hunger to be recognized even in secret. The first two can be managed. The last must be starved. I'm careful never to name what I do as art. Artists crave witness. I crave precision. Their audience is applause. Mine is absence. Yet there are moments when I sense the aesthetic lurking beneath the method. A symmetry in a wound, the balance of light against concrete, the hush that follows completion. If perfection has a sound, it is that hush. Perfection demands routine, and routine becomes faith. Each repetition verifies belief in the equation. Input, pressure, silence. I imagine this is how priests feel when they recite words whose meaning no longer matters, only their accuracy. The ritual itself is proof of control. Occasionally, I encounter anomalies, incidents I did not author yet recognize as belonging to my design. A missing person reported with no follow-up, a death ruled accidental but described with phrasing that echoes my own craft. For a time, these used to concern me. Then I understood. Perfection, once introduced into a system, propagates. It teaches imitation through the residue of method. The city is learning. I find that oddly comforting. Freedom, the kind people advertise, was never my goal. Freedom implies chaos, and chaos is merely a stage before collapse. What I pursue is equilibrium, the exact midpoint between noise and nothing. I have stood there once or twice on nights when even the air seemed to forget its temperature. It is a sensation no drug can replicate, being the axis upon which disorder balances long enough to pretend it is peace. I have often wondered whether perfection can exist without an observer to confirm it. Perhaps not. Perhaps all my precision is meaningless until someone intelligent enough notices the absence. That, I think, is the beginning of corruption, when the craftsman starts to crave a witness. It is not vanity, it is the mathematics of validation. Every system, however pure, seeks feedback. I'm beginning to suspect that my next act will not be about erasure. It will be about resonance. A perfect silence requires something to answer it. And perhaps that is what I have been perfecting toward all along. Not invisibility, but the moment when someone finally looks into the void and sees me looking back.